Hello my Vikings and welcome back to the channel. Today on Let's Paint we are going to paint everyone's most hated dwarf, and that would be Gotrek Gurnisson. As we all know that he is one of the most insanely powerful dwarves to put on the table, which is why he's been banned from just about every tournament, but I had the model laying around, so I decided finally after about 2 years of having him in my collection, it was time to paint him. So we're going to start things off with some wildwood contrast paint, just hitting up all of the wooden planks, barrels, and debris that are on the base. Now, when I first put this model together, there was the option to put him on a somewhat smaller base, but I really liked the idea of him standing on top of a pile of defeated enemies and debris, like he had just completely gone crazy and destroyed everything in his path and was standing atop the pile of destruction. And just, it really seemed like a cool concept to me. Kind of reminded me of a comic strip I used to read called Order of the Stick. I considered whether or not to paint the shaft of his axe in Wildwood, but eventually decided against it, using the idea that his axe would likely break too often given his prowess on the battlefield, so eventually I ended up going with a more metallic shaft for that. And now we're going to use Steel Legion Drab on his pants. I was originally going to paint this in snakebite leather, but wanted a slightly different color. Next, we're going to use Grifthound Orange to paint his beard and hair. I wanted to paint him kind of in the style of the Slayer dwarves, but didn't really know exactly which color to use. So I knew I wanted it to be kind of a angry reddish orange. So later we're going to dry brush this with a red to kind of make it pop a little bit. And now we're going to switch to snakebite leather and paint the front of his kind of tunic belt, along with his boots and the belt itself. Next, we're going to use Castellan Green to paint the clothing on all of the Skaven. And now we're going to paint his body with giliman flesh. Now this ended up drying a little bit lighter than I wanted it to be for him, so we're going to touch it up a little bit later with a kind of flesh shade color. Now if you don't have a shade, you can always do a second coat of this and it'll kind of achieve the same effect. Now we're going to use Dark Oath Flesh on the the exposed skin areas of the Skaven. Now this is going to be even lighter than the giliman flesh, but that's okay because we want the kind of lighter coloration for these guys. And now we're going back to snakebite leather to do a little bit of touch-ups and kind of hit all of the leather wrappings for any of the blades on the base. And we're also going to paint over the pants just to give them a leathered look, but a different leather than the belt and the boots. Quick touch-up with some wildwood here. And now we're going to switch to Incubi Darkness. Now this is going to be used on one place on the base, and then the rest of it is going to be used on his axe. I wanted a kind of recessed dark look in between the detailed ornate patterning on the blade itself. And you'll see what I mean once we touch it up. Alright, now we're going to switch to Lead Belcher. There's a lot of little metallic spots on the base here, as well as the chains that are on his wrists. Now we're not going to touch up the blades themselves, just kind of the strapping on the barrels, little rivets and connections for some of the wood debris. Now I do touch up a couple areas on the base that are kind of nails and rivets that eventually I go back and go over with a different color, but that's more to add a little bit of different color to the base than deciding that I liked it the other way. Now that that's done, we're going to grab Basilicanum Gray, and this is going to be used on any of the little armor plates on the Skaven and all the blades on the base. Alright, so now we're going to use some Greynite Steel. I like this because it has a kind of slightly bluish tint to it, which is a nice difference from all the other metallic pieces that I've been using. And this is going to be used for the axe blades and the shaft of the axe that he's holding. And we're also going to use it on the center portion of the axe blades. I'm trying to be careful with spillover here so that I don't have to go back through and redo the Incubi Darkness. So now we're going to use some Balthazar Gold. There's a couple of skulls on his belt that I touched up kind of as a frame, and now I'm doing each individual rivet in the kind of studded leather on the front of his belt. And then we're going to go through and, like I said, touch up a couple of the rivets on the base and a couple of nails. Now this will just kind of help those little areas on the base kind of stand out just a little bit more compared to all the same colors throughout. Paint the little bobbles on the end of his beard. And now we're moving on to Retributor Armor. Now this is going to be used for a number of different things. We're going to paint the last skull on his belt, the trinket in his hand, and his shoulder pad. Now we're going to switch to a finer tip brush because we're going to use it to paint just the detailing on the axe blades. Now, if you have some spillover happen when you do something like this and you want to remove it, don't panic. Quickly rinse off your brush, dab it dry a little bit so that it's still damp, and then kind of use it to scrub the area clean so that you don't have to go through and repaint the whole thing. If you do it quick enough, you should be able to wipe away the spillover of the paint without removing too much or removing anything that you don't want removed. Alright, so now we're going to dry brush some Flayed One's flesh over the Skaven skin tones, just to kind of give them a little bit more of a white albino-y-ish rat look. Now we're going to use some Doombull Brown to dry brush all of the wooden sections. This will also have the added effect of giving a slightly rusted look to any of the nails that have already been painted. So that's kind of nice. And this will just kind of help the wood come to life and just kind of have the high raised edges of the wood stand out compared to the rest of the model. Alright, now we're going to use some Iron Warriors to dry brush over all of the blades. This will just kind of help them pop out and just highlight the edges. We're also going to use it on his shoulder pad, and this will dull the Retributor armor a little bit, make it look like kind of a bronzy color. Now we're going to use Corn Red to dry brush his beard and hair. This will help kind of dull the orange and bring out a little bit of red, give it that kind of fiery, angry look. Alright, so now we're going to coat the base with Agrax Earthshade. This will help highlight some of the dry brushing and kind of blend anything that we missed into the background. So any areas that didn't quite get painted will get touched over with this and kind of blend in with everything else. We're also going to do his beard and hair with this, just to kind of deepen the highlights. And then touch him up with some Rakeland Flesh Shade. Now we're not going to do the Skaven in this, just Gotrek himself. So now with some Null Oil, we're going to go over his axe blade, and it was about this time that I realized I only painted the outside of his axe blade, not the inside details. So I'm real quick going to go back to the Retributor armor and touch that up before moving on to the Null Oil for this section. And here we are with the finished piece. Alright everyone, this was Gotrek Gurnisson of the Dwarven Heroes. He was a lot of fun to paint and one of the more detailed models that I've worked on so far. Well, that's going to be it for today. Please hit that like button, subscribe for future content, comment in that comment section, and we will see you next time. This is CS the Viking Gamer signing off, and remember everyone, victory or Valhalla.